The horoscope is a map of the heavens at the time an individual is born. The respective positions of the planets in the zodiac reflect different elements and circumstances of our lives. The different planets, for example, the sun, relate to our basic willpower, our drive. The moon relate to our instinctive reactions, our emotions. Mercury relates to our intellect, our communication. Venus, our pleasurable instincts, our social life. Mars relates to the active impulse, our physical drives. Jupiter, our expansive elements such as philosophy, religion and spiritual evolution. Saturn indicates our limitations, our tests and trials in life, but also it has something to say about our professional directions. The outer planets are more generational and relate to large numbers of people, but can sometimes have an influence on us individually. These planets are Uranus, which has to do with our inspiration, our change. Neptune, which is again our ideals and spirituality. And Pluto, which is a very revolutionary planet in action, indicates the elements in our life which have to be removed for growth to take place. Astrology can be used in business in quite a few different ways. Firstly, take for example the employment of individuals for specific jobs. Astrology can be used in this way to determine whether or not the person applying for a job is in fact suitable and capable of doing that job in the best possible way. It can be used for formulating marketing trends. So where money is being spent in marketing, astrology can help determine which periods of the year are suitable for spending money and which areas this money is best spent. In office situations, we find certain people are better suited to working with other people, especially where we have large numbers of people working on one project. Which person is going to work best with another person? This is called synastry. Astrology looks at which temperaments can actually maximize their energy to get the best results in a working situation. And finally, especially now with the emergence of Asian markets in world business, astrology can actually be used to instruct us how to do business with Asian business people who've long held an interest in numerology, astrology, building offices in an astrological manner. This can enhance our manner of doing business with Asian markets. Corporate astrology is much more intricate in that it applies to the combination of people. If on an individual level a person comes for a reading, we're simply talking about this individual and what is happening to that person in their life. Corporate astrology involves a lot of complicated factors. Bosses working with employees, employees and bosses working with clients, timing of contracts. So it is a far more complex type of astrology involving a lot more factors. As an example of people that have used corporate astrology, we might look to a large corporation that was wanting to do business in Korea. They were finding it difficult to secure the business because of the numbers that were used on the contracts. It came to their attention that these contracts weren't being accepted because the Korean counterparts found these numbers quite inauspicious. As soon as we instructed the executives of this company as to which numbers were useful, which numbers were detrimental in doing business with this organisation overseas, the results were forthcoming. They were then able to proceed and to satisfy their counterparts in the Asian country. Well, the facial characteristics also relate back to astrology, and in a corporate sense, this is one area that is also very useful to establish the nature, temperament, and also professional aptitude of a person. There are 4 different characteristics in the use of face reading. Again, these are linked to the astrological and palmistry elements that you may be aware of. The first type is what we call the lunarian or endomorph. This person is normally round-faced, fleshy, thick-lipped, and very, very social in temperament. Second type is what we call the ectomorph. This person is observed or recognized by a very frail frame, an inverted triangular face, which indicates the nervous or mental temperament that this person possesses. The third type is what we call the ligamentous type. These are the square facial types, strong muscular disposition. These are the active types, physical types, the footballers or the soldiers of the world. And finally, we have what we call the mesomorph. The face is rather oblong in disposition, a bony temperament. These are the hard workers, the people that work well into the late hours when everyone else has gone home. So these are the 4 temperaments, and these are how you can recognize them.
Do they change from men to women?
Women are a little more difficult to identify, but they do, if you are careful enough to observe, exhibit similar traits as do the masculine temperaments. Political astrology follows the same sort of lines as business or economic astrology, with the exception that political astrology also looks at the birth of the nation. Just as in normal personal astrology, we look at the birth time of an individual, political astrology looks at the birth time of a nation. So in Australia's case, for example, we would look at the date the Constitution was formed and study the cycles of Australia along with the political leaders to get an insight into the major changes that are going to occur in the history of the nation. The most important feature of astrology, I must emphasize, is not its use as a fortune-telling aid. Astrology, palmistry, face reading, all of these related topics are primarily designed to give human beings an insight into their nature, their spiritual nature, their destiny as beings, and their destiny as individuals to produce and to provide a creative service to the world around them. Astrology is basically looking at the potential of a human being, what that person can become, the person's ability to overcome the inner weaknesses and to grow and to develop. In this way, the future can be determined from an understanding of character. But if we resign ourselves to astrology as simply a fortune-telling tool, then we become fatalists. We, in a way, don't develop as human beings. For this reason, the primary use of astrology is spiritual. You need to be careful that you don't sow negative seeds in the minds of people, and also to make sure that people use astrology as a hand-in-glove tool. People shouldn't resign themselves completely to one tool or another. Astrology is no less a tool than understanding the economics of your business. It is a tool that should be used hand-in-glove so that you can maximize the understanding you have in other areas of life. Medical astrology as yet hasn't taken off quite as much as palmistry. Obviously palmistry is relevant to the physical body of the person and is more apt to be used as a diagnostic tool. Medical astrology is as effective, however. I remember a story of a great astrologer in India who would sit high up in a room there, and he would have this large bell downstairs. Whenever a sick person would come, they would simply ring the bell. By the time the person would walk up the stairs to the office of this old astrologer, he would already have the diagnosis and the mixture in mind for this person. The time that a person gets ill is reflected in the positions of the planets at that time, and the planets can actually tell us what disorders or diseases are prevalent at that time. I believe astrology and its future are quite strong in becoming more and more prevalent, especially in the business arena and the political sphere. In fact, to date, it's not a well-known fact that astrology has been used in a lot of these areas, but because of the stigma attached to it, it hasn't openly been admitted. I believe it is currently being used in a lot of governmental and corporate areas, but the future of astrology is such that it will become more and more accepted, not so much more and more used. It is becoming more and more used, it is becoming more prevalent, but I still feel it is being used quite a lot now, and will become more openly admitted in these conservative areas.